For 7 years, he came to work not for money, but to save lives. Nobody knew his secret. While other people walked past, he saw something different. He saw hungry children, and he couldn't look away. He was raising his daughter alone. But even in his own struggle, he couldn't ignore the struggles of others. Every single day he watched. Every single day he made a choice. And every single choice would change everything. This is the story of a man who gave everything. Until one day, the world finally found out. 7 years ago, Michael Carter was different in the way that grief makes people different. He had lost his wife, Sarah, to cancer. She had been his anchor, his light, the person who made their home feel like the safest place on earth. They had met in college, a chance encounter at a library where she was studying for her nursing boards, and he was working the late shift shelving books. She looked up, caught him watching her, and smiled in a way that changed the trajectory of his entire life. They built a life together slowly, thoughtfully. They had one daughter, Maya, their only child, born after years of trying and waiting and hoping. When Sarah got pregnant, Michael wept. When Maya was born, he held her for the first time and made a silent vow to protect her with everything he had. Sarah was the heart of their family. Michael was the steady foundation. But steadiness can only hold so much weight. When Sarah's diagnosis came, it came quietly at first. A persistent cough, fatigue that didn't improve with rest. Then the word that changes everything: cancer, stage 3. The doctors used words like treatment, survival rate, and hope. But over the next 3 years, as Sarah fought with a courage that broke Michael's Jelsra's heart, because it showed him just how hard it was, they all learned what those words really meant. Michael was there for every appointment, every chemotherapy session, every moment when the strength seemed to run out, and she needed him to be stronger for both of them. He learned to make her favorite meals when she could barely eat. He learned to hold her hair back and whisper encouragement when the poison they were pumping into her veins made her violently sick. He learned to smile when it felt like his own insides were being torn apart. And then, on a Tuesday morning in March, she was gone. The funeral was crowded. People from everywhere came to say goodbye to Sarah. Her nursing colleagues, her friends from church, her book club, neighbors who had come to love her. Michael stood through it all in a fog, holding 6-year-old Maya's small hand, trying to understand how the world could still be spinning when his had stopped completely. Maya didn't understand. She kept asking when Mommy was coming home from the hospital. Michael didn't know how to tell her that Mommy was never coming home again. The months that followed were the hardest of his life. Michael had a job working as the head janitor at Lincoln Elementary School, the same school where Maya would eventually attend. The work was stable, the pay was modest but reliable, and the job came with health insurance, which was something Sarah's illness had made him very aware of needing. He worked long hours, early mornings before school started, evening shifts after the students and teachers left, and all the time it took to keep a building with 500 children running clean and safe. He came home to an empty house except for Maya. He learned to pack her lunch every morning. He learned to help her with homework. He learned to do her hair, something Sarah had always done with such care, creating intricate braids and patterns that made Maya feel beautiful. His hands were large and clumsy with the hair, but he did his best. Maya never complained. Life became a routine of survival. Wake up, pack lunch for Maya, drop her at school, work, pick her up, cook dinner, do homework, put her to bed, spend the evening doing laundry, cleaning, preparing for the next day, sleep, repeat. For a year, then 2 years, this was his life, and he wouldn't have changed any of it, because Maya needed him, and that need was the only thing that kept him moving forward. But as Michael worked through the halls of Lincoln Elementary, he began to see things. Small things at first. A child in line for lunch being turned away because their family couldn't afford it. The embarrassment on the kids. That particular shame that children experience when they're poor, and everyone can see it. Michael had known poverty in his own childhood. His mother had worked 2 jobs, and they still didn't always have enough. He recognized that look. It was the look of hunger, yes. But more than that, it was the look of invisibility. As weeks turned into months, he saw it more and more. It was usually the same group of kids. He began to recognize them. There was Jaden, a quiet boy in 3rd grade whose mother worked nights at a hospital. There was Keisha, and her brother Marcus, whose father had lost his job. There was little Tommy, who always wore the same shirt, who the other kids sometimes made fun of because his family lived in a shelter. One day, Michael was mopping the cafeteria after lunch, when he found Tommy sitting alone at a table, staring at an empty tray. His lips were moving. He was counting down something. Michael approached him carefully. "Hey, buddy," Michael said gently. "You doing okay?" Tommy jumped, startled. "I'm fine," he said quickly, which meant he wasn't fine at all. "What were you counting?" Michael asked, sitting down at the small table next to the boy. "My credits," Tommy said quietly. "My mom said if I can't find a way to pay for lunch by tomorrow, I don't get to eat tomorrow either." Michael felt something break inside him. A child, counting credits. A child who understood that food was something that had to be earned, or deserved, or purchased. A child to whom he owed the freedom to just be a child. "That's a lot of pressure," Michael said carefully. "You want to know a secret?" Tommy nodded. "I used to be like you. When I was your age, my mom didn't always have money for lunch either, and I felt really lonely about it. But you know what I learned? That it wasn't my fault, and that it wasn't permanent, and most importantly, that there were people who cared. You're not alone, Tommy." The boy's eyes filled with tears. "My mom feels bad," he whispered. "She cries at night because she can't give me enough." Michael's chest clenched. He thought of Sarah, who would have known exactly what to say to this child. He thought of Maya, and how he did everything in his power to never let her feel the weight that Tommy was carrying. That night, Michael went home and did the math. The average lunch cost $2.75. The fees accumulated. He looked at the school system, which he could access through his job, without thinking about the practicality, without calculating what it would cost him. He quietly walked into the cafeteria office and asked the manager if there was a way to pay for a student's lunch debt. The manager, Mrs. Okonkwo, looked at him with surprise. "Mr. Carter, are you asking if you can pay a student's lunch debt personally?" "Yes," he said. "Is that allowed?" Mrs. Okonkwo paused. She was a woman in her 60s, Nigerian-American, with kind eyes and a weariness that came from years of managing a school cafeteria with a limited budget and too many hungry children. She smiled sadly. "It's allowed," she said, "but I have to tell you, there are 43 students with unpaid lunch debt right now. 43. The school board is talking about cutting the free lunch program entirely next year. And you can't fix this, Mr. Carter. No one person can fix this." Michael nodded slowly. She was right. He couldn't fix systemic poverty. He couldn't make his city allocate more funds to schools in low-income neighborhoods. He couldn't change the fact that wealth inequality meant that some children ate breakfast, while others came to school hungry. But he could do something. He could do the one thing that was within his power. "Start with Tommy," he said. "Put his debt on me. And if there's anyone else, if anyone else wants to, I'd like to help." Mrs. Okonkwo stared at him for a long moment. Then she came around her desk and hugged him. "God bless you, Mr. Carter," she said. What Michael didn't realize in that moment was that he was starting something that would consume 7 years of his life. He was making a choice that would mean sacrifice he couldn't yet imagine. But he was also starting something that would eventually touch the lives of hundreds of Karju children. At first, it was just Tommy. Michael paid the $87 in accumulated lunch debt. He didn't expect anything in return. He didn't put up a sign saying, "Michael paid for this." He simply did it, quietly, the way he had always lived his life. But then he saw Jaden looking at Tommy, saw the longing in his eyes, and asked Mrs. Okonkwo about Jaden's balance. It was $124. Michael paid it. He told himself it was a one-time thing, a gesture of goodness. Then it was Keisha and Marcus. Then it was 4 other kids he recognized from the cafeteria line. Then it was 10 kids. Then it was more. What Michael discovered was that when you start paying attention to suffering, you can't stop. When you start to see the invisible children, the ones that poverty has made invisible to most of the world, you begin to understand that they are everywhere, and you have to decide, do you pretend you don't see them, or do you do something about it? Michael decided to see. He opened a second bank account. He began budgeting his money differently. Instead of saving for vacations that he and Maya would never take anyway, instead of buying himself new clothes, instead of going out with friends from work, he funneled everything extra into paying for children's lunch debts. He worked overtime whenever it was available. He picked up weekend shifts. He started doing small repairs for people in the community, fixing doors, painting houses, anything that would bring in a few extra dollars. He never told anyone why he needed the money. It was just something he did. Maya understood in the way that children understand, which is to say, she didn't fully understand the sacrifice, but she understood that her father was working very hard, and she tried to be good so she wouldn't add to his burden. "Daddy, do you need me to do more chores?" she asked him one evening when she was 8 years old, as if her homework and school and childhood weren't enough. Michael knelt down to her level. "Maya, sweetheart, you are perfect exactly as you are. I'm just working hard because it makes me happy." Which was true in a way. It did make him happy. Not because he enjoyed the exhaustion or the constant stress of money or going to bed every night knowing that there were still more children with unpaid lunch debts that he couldn't do would help, but because it made him happy in the way that living in alignment with your deepest values makes you happy. Every child he helped was a child who could sit in the cafeteria without shame. Every debt he paid was a quiet statement that said, "You matter. Your hunger matters. Your presence matters." And here's the thing nobody tells you about doing good things in secret. The universe notices. Mrs. Okonkwo noticed. She watched this man who came in day after day, who cleaned the school with meticulous care and dignity, who had never asked for recognition or thanks, and she began to understand his pattern. She never revealed his secret to anyone. She was too wise for that. But she began to work with him. When students had outstanding debts, she would mention it to Michael. When a family was going through an especially hard time, she would flag it. "Mr. Carter, we have a new student," she would say. "The mother just lost her job. 5 children. The lunch debt is already at $200. And Michael would nod and say, "I'll take care of it." Over the years, Michael paid off lunch debts for over 300 children. He never asked their families for money. He never made a big deal about it. He simply did it, quietly, methodically, the way he did everything else. Some of the children never knew it was him. They simply noticed one day that their debt had disappeared, and they could eat lunch without fear. Others figured it out when they saw Michael working in the cafeteria or overheard teachers talking. Some of them tried to thank him, but Michael would wave them off. "Just pay it forward someday," he would say, "when you're grown up and you can help someone else." The children, they never forgot this. 30 years later, some of them would remember the mysterious man who had believed in them when they had no reason to believe in themselves. They would remember that kindness. And some of them would indeed pay it forward, treating their own children with extra gentleness, giving to homeless people on the street, working in social services. Michael's quiet choice created ripples he would never fully know about. But inside his small home, inside his private life, Michael was struggling, really struggling. The years were taking a toll. He was in his mid-50s now, and his body ached in ways it never used to. His face had more lines. His beard had gone completely white. He would come home from work and sit on the couch for just a moment, and sometimes he would fall asleep sitting up, too tired to even make it to his bed. Maya, now a teenager, began to understand more deeply what her father was doing. She began to find receipts, to do the math, to realize that her father was sacrificing not just money, but time, energy, and peace of mind. "Dad, you don't have to do this," she said to him when she was 13. "Those kids aren't your responsibility." Michael took a moment before responding. He was sitting at the kitchen table with a cup of cold coffee in front of him, too tired to have drunk it while it was hot. "When your mom was sick," he said carefully, "I would have paid any amount of money to help her. I would have done anything. And I did everything I could. But you know what I learned? That sometimes there are people you can help and people you can't. There are moments when you can make a difference and moments when the world is just too big and your hands are too small." He looked at Maya with eyes that held the weight of everything he carried. "These children," he continued, "they're children I can help. They're moments where my hands are big enough to make a difference, and I'm going to do it." for as long as I'm able. Not because it's my responsibility, but because it's possible. And when something is possible, and someone is suffering, I have to try. Maya was quiet for a long moment. Then she went to her room and came back with her piggy bank. She poured out her saved money, about $47. Then I'm helping too, she said. It's our thing. Michael's eyes filled with tears. He gathered his daughter into his arms and held her while they both cried, for Sarah, for the children they couldn't help, for the world that made kindness necessary in the first place. From that day forward, Maya helped her father. She did extra chores for neighbors. She sold her artwork and crafts online. She contributed whatever she could to the lunch debt fund. And she learned something her mother had always known and her father had always practiced, that love is not just something you feel. Love is something you do, again and again, until it costs you something, until it shapes who you are. The secret lasted 7 years. 7 years of quiet sacrifice. 7 years of Michael and Maya doing their small part to fight hunger in their community. 7 years of nobody knowing his name or his story, and Michael being perfectly fine with that. But secrets have a way of revealing themselves, especially when the world is finally ready to pay attention. It started with David Chen. David had attended Lincoln Elementary when Michael first started paying off lunch debts. David had been from a family that struggled. His father's restaurant had failed, and for several years, David's family faced real financial hardship. David remembered the shame of the lunch line. He remembered the day when his debt simply disappeared, and he never quite figured out who had helped him, but he never forgot the kindness. 25 years later, David Chen was a successful restaurant owner. He had opened 3 upscale restaurants throughout Chicago. He was doing well, really well. He was sitting in a podcast interview talking about his journey from poverty to success, and he was asked a simple question. Was there anyone along the way who believed in you? And David told the story. Not with Michael's name. He had never known Michael's real name for certain, had only heard whispers, but with the memory of what kindness had meant to a hungry kid. He told the story of an invisible man in a school who had paid his lunch debt, who had given him something more valuable than money. He had given him the knowledge that he mattered. The podcast went viral. In our age of content and sharing, and the internet's ability to amplify stories, this particular story resonated deeply. People started commenting, sharing their own stories about teachers who believed in them, janitors who showed them kindness, the invisible people in our institutions who make life livable for the most vulnerable. Within a week, a reporter from the Chicago Tribune reached out to David. "Do you remember anything else about this man?" the reporter asked. "What school did you attend?" "Lincoln Elementary," David said. "On the South Side." The reporter did what reporters do. They made calls. They investigated. They talked to Mrs. Okonkwo, who was now retired but still living in Chicago. And Mrs. Okonkwo, after carefully considering what Michael would want, decided that it was time for the world to know his name. Michael found out that his secret was public knowledge, the way most people find out bad news, through social media. He was sitting in the school's break room on a Tuesday afternoon when he got a call from the school principal. "Michael," she said gently, "have you checked Twitter?" He hadn't. Michael didn't really use social media, but he did now. And what he found was his own story being told and retold and shared hundreds of thousands of times. People were calling him a hero. People were crying over his story. There was a hashtag #JanitorDad. Michael felt sick. He felt exposed. He felt deeply uncomfortable with the attention. He wanted to disappear, but the story kept growing. Local news stations wanted to interview him. The school board wanted to honor him. A fundraiser was started in his name by people who had learned his story and wanted to help him continue his work. A teacher he had worked with for 15 years came to him in tears saying, "I had no idea. Why didn't you tell me? I could have helped." Michael's response was simple. Because it wasn't about me. It was never about me. But now it was about him, whether he liked it or not. And he had to decide, would he lean into this attention and use it to help more children, or would he retreat back into the shadows? That decision was made easier by a phone call. A call from the Cook County School Board. They wanted to meet with him. They had something to propose. The meeting happened on a Thursday morning in the main board office. Michael sat across from 4 board members, feeling completely out of place in this formal setting, wearing his one good suit that he had bought for Sarah's funeral. "Mr. Carter," the board chair said, "we have become aware of your contributions to our students over the past 7 years. We want to tell you that it has not gone unnoticed by us. In fact, it has inspired us." Michael waited, not sure where this was going. "We are proposing," the board chair continued, "a complete revision of our lunch subsidy program. We are going to make lunch free for all students in schools where more than 50% of students qualify for free and reduced lunch. We are going to eliminate the lunch debt completely and permanently, and we want you to work with us, in an official capacity, to oversee the implementation of this program." Michael felt the room tilt. "I'm a janitor," he said. "You are," the board chair agreed, "but you understand our students in a way that most of us never will. You have proven that you care about their dignity and their well-being, and you have inspired us to do better. We'd like to offer you a position as our student well-being advocate. Same pay as you make now, but your job would be to work across our district identifying and meeting the needs of our most vulnerable students. No more secrets, no more working alone, but the same heart that has carried you this far." Michael had to excuse himself to cry in the bathroom for 20 minutes. It's now been 2 years since Michael's story was revealed to the world. Lincoln Elementary's lunch debt program has been completely eliminated. Michael works with the school district to identify students in crisis, not just hunger, but homelessness, domestic violence, poverty, all the invisible struggles that children carry to school every day. The fundraiser that was started has raised over $2 million. Michael didn't want to use it for himself. He refused any of the money. Instead, the fund has been used to support the families of the students he helped. Scholarships have been created. Rent assistance programs have been established. The invisible man's visible legacy continues to grow. Maya is now in college, studying social work. She's carrying forward what her parents taught her, that love is something you do, that no one is invisible, that a single person's choice to care can change everything. And Michael? He continues his work quietly, though he's no longer invisible. He still cleans, he still works as a janitor, even with his new title. He says he likes having his hands busy while his mind thinks about the problems his community faces. When people thank him now, he redirects them always to one person, his wife, Sarah. "She taught me that," he always says, "that we're all connected, that we're our brother's keeper, that love is the most powerful force in the world. She would be doing this if she were here. She just started it in me, and now I keep going." And that's the truth at the heart of this story. Michael Carter didn't become a hero when the world found out. He was always a hero. Every single day, for 7 years, when he quietly paid off a lunch debt that wasn't his responsibility, when he sacrificed his own comfort for a child he barely knew, when he chose to see the invisible and make them visible, that's when he was a hero. The world just finally caught up to what the children had always known. This is Michael's story, but it's also the story of Mrs. Okonkwo, who understood hunger. It's the story of David Chen, who remembered kindness. It's the story of Maya, who learned that love requires sacrifice. It's the story of the hundreds of children who went to school knowing they could eat because one man decided that they mattered. And it's a story that asks each of us, what will you do with your power? Where do you see invisible suffering? What small choice can you make today that might change someone's life forever? Because that's the real lesson of Michael Carter. Not that he was special, but that he wasn't. He was just a person who decided to act. And if we all made that decision, if we all chose in our own ways to help the people in front of us who are struggling, imagine what our world could become. That's the story Michael never told himself, but it's the story the world is telling now, and it's far from over.